I just wanted to ask, because there's so many young people in the audience, how many of you remember the 2010 floods? Not actually just watching it in the news, but also experiencing it. So that's a lot of hands. That's great. That's great. So I'll tell you what I remember from the 2010 floods. In July 2010, we were all watching the news, and we could see floods were ravaging Sawat and Nushaira. Cities were being cut off, and there was a lot of people, hundreds of thousands of people who were displaced. And it was really alarming for us. So my friends and I, just like many other Pakistanis, we decided to do what we could, and we were uh, raising money, and then over the weekend we used to go and deliver the relief goods to people in Sawat, Nushaira, and as the floods were traveling downstream, we went to the south, to Muzaffargarh and Rajanpur. So, but for each trip, it was a lesson in helplessness. We felt really helpless because even though the relief goods were useful for the people, it was really insufficient to match the scale of the loss, right? So you can't really console someone who had lost their child or lost their home or everything that they possessed. So the real battle that we felt, the real battle was really lost by then. And I started asking myself whether there was something that we could have done to prevent that suffering, to prevent it from ever happening. And to find those answers, I ended up in Japan at iCharm and GRIPS, trying to learn about this from the best. And what we learned over there, I mean, I just learned that we have been using the wrong words. A flood happens, and we call it a natural disaster, right? And if an earthquake levels an entire city, what do we say? It's an act of God. So the language is comforting, it absolves us of responsibility. But what if I told you disasters are not natural, right? A tremor only becomes a catastrophe because of our choices. The choices that we made or didn't make, that it could be a long time before the ground ever shook. So that really means the disasters are our own choice, right? So disasters happen when nature's extremes collide with weak systems, poor planning, and the way we expose people to risk. And these weaknesses are our own choices, poor governance, and long-term neglect. So take the recent floods in Rawalpindi and Islamabad, for example. The hazard was the heavy rains that fell over the area. But how did those rains turn into floods that took the lives of 65 people? And it also blocked some highways, motorway, many of the roads were blocked. The government very predictably said that it's unprecedented rains. The rains were just too much. And a lot of the people in the government and elsewhere, they started blaming climate change as well. But there was a recent report by an international organization, the World Weather Attribution. They said only 15% of those rains were caused by climate change. So again, we're looking for answers. So we look at this satellite image, trying to figure out what was really causing that damage and why were we so ill-prepared to deal with it, deal with its consequences. A simple glance at this, it shows, if you can see it on the screens, all the gray areas are the urbanized areas. The brown is where we are actually changing, land use is changing. We're converting vegetation, agriculture fields, and forests into real estate projects. And we are paving them over, turning them into residential areas, villas, and commercial areas. And this land use map, it also shows the changes over the past 20 to 25 years. You can see the red is the expanding urban areas, and they are expanding in all directions. The brown is also showing the barren land, which is being prepped up for future urbanization, right? This is, of course, happening at a huge environmental and ecological cost. This rapid change over the area that you just saw was, um, altering the relationship between rainfall and how much runoff enters the streams, right? So the same amount of rainfall is actually creating more runoff, and that the streams that the runoff is entering have been narrowed down over the years. If you see this screen, you can see an image of 20 years ago. There's a channel on the bottom right. That's the natural path of a stream. But then this is what it looks like when it got turned into yet another phase of a real estate project. You can see the channel in the corner. That had to go in the favor of residential plots and straightened into a much smaller, under-designed channel. And when it rained, it overflowed and swept a car away. In that car was a father and a daughter who both lost their lives as it got swept away. Let's look at another place. This is showing us the streams originating from Margala, but wait, now it's been converted into homes and apartments. All the streams have been narrowed down or completely erased. It's a complete regulatory failure, which is turning our streets into rivers when it rains. So it's pointing towards, in other words, we're just saying that we're ourselves responsible for, turning those rains into a disaster. The story is not unique to these twin cities. Our biggest city, Karachi, is also experiencing something similar. We have converted the forests in its river catchment of Leari and Malid rivers and turning them into mega real estate projects. And its streams have been encroached in the name of development as well. Right at the confluence of Jhelum and Chenab was this town, a small town, Pir Kort Sadhana. And it's a town where when I was reaching there, I thought this place would be in a terrible state because it gets flooded so frequently from either of the rivers. So it's usually devastated by floods on an, let's say, almost nearly annual basis. So when I reached there, I met this wonderful person, Siddiq, and he told me a secret about floods that I hadn't learned in the classroom. He told me that his people had learned to live with the floods and how they had built homes. As you can see in the video, you can see their homes are built in a way that it's raised. The entire home is raised, even their courtyard, so that they can bring their cattle and livestock inside, and they can also, let's say, they stock up on the food and hay for the animals, and that keeps them safe. They listen to all the government warnings about floods coming from the upstream and use that lead time to take protective actions and evacuate, as you can see at the bottom. But all is not well in Pir Kort Sadhana. The government's infrastructure, like the basic health units and the school, it gets submerged each year at the time of floods. But this approach of adapting and living with nature is similar to what we saw in Jamuna when I was there in 2018. People have learned to live with floods. For them, floods is a minor nuisance if you must, but not more than that. I realize that this is the key for adaptation for millions of people in Pakistan, especially those who are living along the rivers in the floodplains. We can learn to live with nature's rhythms. We can overcome adversity with resilience and ingenuity. This year as well, while some call these floods unprecedented, in my opinion, there's no such thing. The flows that we saw this year happened so many times before. In the 1970s, in 1988, 92, 2010, 2014. Each time, we have borne the cost. Millions of people were affected each time, right? Many of our structures are so under-designed and ill-maintained that their failure is planned. So there is an example of Sidnai Barrage, Sidnai Headworks. It has a safe capacity which is so limited that it had to be breached numerous times in the past 50 years, including this year. This synthetic aperture radar image shows a channel which has been straightened during the colonial era in the 1860s. And a spill channel which was later added to pass the flood flows, but it has never been maintained. It has a very limited capacity. So every time there is a flood, they have to breach it from the right bank, and this is what happens. You can see all those people who are affected because of a choice. These structures increase risk rather than decreasing it and take a toll on people who were otherwise safe. It's an entirely preventable man-made disaster. And we don't have the numbers from this year's floods, but in 2022, the losses and damages totaled around $30 billion. A small fraction of it can help finance the interventions required to make sure it doesn't happen again. So I used to wonder back in 2010, are we powerless against the floods? Is there anything that we can do to prevent those them from happening and prevent that suffering? The real challenge here lies in our willingness to accept preventable suffering as fate. We can't blame nature or climate change or our hostile neighbor for our own failures. Let's not just be prepared for the next disaster. How can we design a world where it never has to happen? Our choices, therefore, are very clear. We can fight nature. We can continue to fight nature, narrowing the rivers, paving over the forests, and trying to fight it with concrete. Or we can choose to listen, to adapt, to live in harmony with nature's extremes. Thank you so much.